What's up, everybody? It's Spencer Alessi, and this is the Esports Narrative. This is episode 9, and today we're talking with the FGC commentator, the historian, James Chen. James jchensor Chen has been a longtime commentator for fighting games such as Street Fighter IV, and has had years and years of experience teaching people how to play fighting games and understanding fighting games. He has a Twitch channel where he does his best to help players grow as fighting game players and enjoys various fighting games content. James, welcome to the show. Thank you for being here. I appreciate it.
Thank you for having me on.
Let us know, let all the podcast listeners know what I might have left out in your intro or anything unique or interesting about you and anything I got wrong, and tell us a little bit about how you got into esports.
Most of that's correct. Like I said, I'm also part of the UltraChenTV Group. With me and Ultra David, we do like a show every Tuesday where we talk about everything that's going on in the fighting game community. And then I also that's on twitch.tv/UltraChenTV. And then I stream on my own channel on twitch.tv/jchensor. But otherwise, I'm running around trying to do as much commentary as I can through all the different events that are going on throughout, the states and sometimes even outside of the country too.
Mm-hmm. Now, how did you get started in commentating?
It was actually kind of like just a fortuitous kind of thing. I mean, it's definitely nice that, I live in Southern California, which is where, Alex Valle and Level Up and all those guys started everything up. But, it also comes just from my history of always trying to be as educational in the FGC as possible. So I used to write like FAQs. I wrote tutorial articles on Shoryuken.com. I was always in the Shoryuken forums, like giving people tips and everything like that. And so Alex Valle basically started attending this weekly gathering in somebody's garage, literally a person whose handle his name is Shiggle BMX. And we used to go to his place and play a bunch of Street Fighter, and Vi started going there and started teaching people how to play Street Fighter. He was really trying to level up the Southern Californian scene. And I decided to go there just to check it out, hang out, and I got hooked on hanging out there every week and playing. And finally, one of the players there, by the name of AJ Papa, was like, you know what? I'm going to learn how to stream. So he actually started streaming the event, live streaming the event. And, this was like basically when commentary kind of just started, and it wasn't like a fully fleshed out thing. And so, Vi was trying to explain a lot of stuff and onto the stream of what he was doing, but he couldn't quite word it, articulate it properly. And he was like, wait a minute, I know James is really good at explaining things and stuff. So he's like, here, James, tell people what's going on. Tell people what it is that I'm doing. Explain to people. And so I jumped on there, started doing some commentary, and, although obviously, it was really rough back then, but, throughout the years, I just, kept going from that. I found out that I really enjoyed it from that experience. And so I just kept doing it. And so here we are now, pretty much a year later, and I'm still doing commentary.
Now, I see a lot on your Twitch channel, a lot of educational and guides and stuff like that, and just teaching in general. What is it about teaching that really gets you going? Like, what do you love about it so much?
To be honest, it's just because I'm such a huge fan of fighting games. I think playing fighting games and knowing how to play fighting games and being good at fighting games is one of the most – I mean, of course, I'm biased, but I still think I think it's one of the most underappreciated talents there is, right? Because there's still this weird reputation that fighting games is about button mashing and those kind of things like that. But like, it's such a talented and skillful thing, and it's such a psychological battle between you and your opponents, tied to needing some, finger dexterity and execution and composure and all these things. And it's so skilled. And the thing that makes me enjoy teaching it really is just getting people to understand why it's so great. And then if I can get them to play it and they can understand the higher levels of it, they can also experience that kind of euphoria that exists when you when you actually play a high level match. Like there's very little like it when you actually get a chance to really feel how like when you play a really smart match and you and your opponent are just adapting and trying to outthink each other, and it's just such a mental battle.
Mm.
Like it's so rewarding and it's so satisfying. And the more people I could get to do something like that, the happier I am.
Yeah, I remember back in the day playing Mortal Kombat. It was such an addicting feeling of losing that you would just try and try and try it over and over and over again, and losing was almost like an addictive thing where like you hate to lose, and it keeps you going.
Yeah, absolutely. And then, like I said, once you do start winning, oh man, then it starts to feel really good at that point.
Of course. Winning is the best. It's the cream. Yes. Tell me, what obviously have a lot of passion for fighting games, and that's clearly the case. What is it about esports, and particularly fighting games, that makes it so exciting?
A lot of it, I've talked about how much I love the game and just how, exciting and fun playing the game is. But at the same time, one of the things that I like about especially the fighting game community is just the people that are there, the personalities, the stories that come from all the players. The nice thing it's interesting because the fighting game community is one of the main esports out there that's a individual one-on-one kind of event. Right, so there's not much teams out there like there is for MOBAs and FPSs and stuff like that. But as a result, every person is so individual and so unique and so highlighted, and it's interesting because you also get to see their flaws, you get to see their good sides, their bad sides, and all sorts of things. It's like this. It's a really interesting human drama in a weird way, like perfectly highlighted by the way Evo ended this year with Street Fighter V Evolution, the big, basically the Super Bowl of the fighting game events that takes place in Vegas every year. The top 8 for Street Fighter V, the grand finals came down to, Punk, who's been winning everything and just like America's best hope for winning a major Street Fighter at Evo. And against Okito, the player from Japan who everybody in the U.S. loves, and he's been coming to EVO since 2002. He was even there before it was called EVO. He was at B5, I'm pretty sure. And so he's just like this veteran, and everybody loves him. He's this great personality. And so just that kind of human drama, like between the two players, and just seeing how it plays out is just it's emotional, and it's thrilling, and it's and on top of all that, the level of talent and skill on display is just tremendous. So it's very exciting.
Yeah.
For those who have watched the Evo, they saw how emotional I got. So that's indication. So.
Sure. Now, every story has a failure. What's been the worst moment for you so far in esports?
That's a really good question, actually. Because there's just been a lot of ups and downs and everything like that. Like, it's interesting because like most of the quote, kind of down moments that I can think of were all before it was really all that esports. Not saying that esports has made everything better because, we're in a struggle right now trying to figure out how to stay in esports but not lose our personality at the same time, because the FGC is such a unique feel and a grassroots, base, and we don't want to lose any of that. But, even before all that happened, I probably one of the most, down, I guess you could call it, or sad, or just pessimistic periods was actually in 2008 at Evo. It was before Street Fighter 4 came out. Street Fighter 4 was in beta and playable at Evo that year, but it wasn't very good at the time. It was still very raw. And I still remember that year because it was the venue. Part of it had to do with the venue not being very good. The Tropicana was not a great place.
Mm-hmm.
But also, it was like the first year that you could literally tell that every scene, the entrants were smaller. It just felt like there were so many fewer people there that year. And I don't know, I mean, it might not have been. I don't have the actual numbers to back that claim up. But there was something about that year that I still remember just looking around the crowd and just thinking to myself, this could be the end of it. You know, like this could be. Like, there were no new players. There's no young people in there. Everybody who was there were all the same people that I've been seeing for the past few years. And, you know, with no young players coming in there, I was just like, well, we're all going to grow old and we're all not going to be able to do this anymore. And we're probably the last of the breed. And it was really kind of a sobering effect. And I really thought about at that time, like, to just hang it up and just move on and live real life, basically. And then 2009 happened, when that was the Street Fighter 4 rebirth, and that changed everything. So
yeah. And with the failures come success. You can't have failure without success, and and vice versa. What's been the biggest accomplishment so far for you?
I mean, just to be able to do the top 8 at Mandalay Bay and just see how it looked. Probably not even this past year, but the year before that, you know, that was the peak that we hit recently with, you know, 5,000 entrants in Street Fighter 5 and everything like that. Just how crazy it was over there, you know, just to be able to be a part of that and to be able to be able to commentate the top 8 for Street Fighter 5 that year was pretty fantastic. But I mean, that's kind of, I guess, maybe an obvious answer, and the less obvious answer is, honestly, I have just been able to travel to a lot of places, and I have been afforded a lot of opportunity to meet a lot of different people, and talking to all these people and hearing how they got into fighting games, or having them come up to me and be like, you know, I never would have played fighting games if it wasn't for your commentary. Or, you know, like, oh, I have friends who don't care about fighting games, but because they listen to your commentary, like, they totally get it. They understand. You know, when people say that they see how emotional I get and they understand and they appreciate it and stuff like that, you know, it's knowing that, you know, my goal is to spread the love of fighting games, and to hear people tell me that, you know, I am helping them learn and understand and appreciate, you know, the emotion and the beauty of fighting games is probably the times when I feel, you know, most proud of the scene, you know, and most happy about everything.
Yeah, because you're not only teaching someone about fighting games, you're teaching them other things that are kind of the soft skills, you know, like how to enjoy something that they're passionate about. You know, it's kind of those in-between skills of that you're really affecting someone's life, and you're using fighting games as a vehicle to push positivity and passion and experience and all those kind of cushy, feely things. You know what I mean?
Oh, it's also weird, too, because I always say to be decent at fighting games really requires you to look deep within yourself. Because the thing about fighting games is, because they're not team-based, if you're losing, there's really no one to blame but yourself, right? There's there's nothing you can do about that. And the other tricky thing about fighting games is that, you know, if you have someone like Tokido who's using Akuma, you know, Tokido who won Evo this year, and he's using Akuma, the Akuma that he's using is literally not any different than the Akuma that you're using. Like, there's no extra equipment that you can buy. There's no levels that you can gain. It's literally the same character. So to understand that he's just able to do something with the same tool set that you are not able to do really takes a lot of okay, it's me, you know, like, I'm the one who needs to improve, you know, and
it's humbling, right?
That way, yeah.
It's humbling.
Yes, very, very humbling. Very humbling.
Now, what's the biggest rivalry right now in the fighting game community?
The biggest rivalry right now is probably still U.S. versus Japan right now. Or I don't even know if it's U.S. versus Japan necessarily, but that's always kind of one of the ones that's highlighted, especially the way that this year ended. Because, you know, since Street Fighter 4, you know, Street Fighter 4 is really when it kind of blew up and really exploded from there. And so, you know, counting from the start of Street Fighter 4, let's see, in 2009 was Japan, 2010 was Japan, 2011 was Japan, 2012 was Korea, then we had Singapore, then we had France, then we went back to Japan, then we went to Korea, and this year was supposed to be US's chance to win. You know, like this was US's opportunity to win EVO. We just won Capcom Cup earlier in December with NuckleDo winning that, you know, and that was a big deal. But US still hasn't won an EVO yet, and so somehow, like through some twist of fate, top 8 was 3 U.S. players and 5 Japanese players, which is really rare because usually there's at least like 4 or 5 countries represented, but it was only 2 this year. And Grand Final, sure enough, came down to U.S. and Japan, and this was like supposed to be the year that U.S. was going to take it, but nope. Tokido snatched that away, and Japan remained on top. So
now, with all your experience, you've seen a lot. You've been in the industry for a long time. Have you seen competitors playing in multiple fighting games, or can you be competitive and win major tournaments in multiple games? Have you seen that? Is that something that people do, or is that not something?
It is definitely possible. There are some players out there that are ridiculous. And in fact, Tokido, you know, who won EVO, is actually probably what most people consider one of the greatest fighting game players of all time, because he's gotten top 8 in KOF, he's gotten top 8 in Soul Caliburs before, he's gotten top 8 in Tekkens and in Street Fighter 2, and he is probably one of the most talented fighting game players that I could possibly state. Like, if you had to pick like a top 3 for all-time, all-around fighting game players, Tokido has got to be on everyone's list, and if he's not, you're wrong. Like, that's just how it is. But I mean, even Tokido has basically taken a backseat to most of the games so that he could concentrate on Street Fighter V, and you see it paid off for him. But there are some other players out there, you know, who are super good at many games, and one of the ones that like that a lot of people like to talk about is Sonic Fox, who has basically won like every Mortal Kombat and Injustice tournament save a few. And then he's also one of the best Skullgirls players on the planet. He's also super good at Dead or Alive. He can be competitive in all those games. And you got people like Justin, who's good at, you know, the Marvel games, Street Fighter. He's, you know, placed in top 8. He's won some major Tekken tournaments a long time ago. You know, there's a lot of players. Chris G is another one. Like, every time he goes to an event, after the event is done, he's like, yeah, I got 2nd place here, 4th place here, 4th place here, 5th place here, and 8th place here. That wasn't a bad tournament, you know, like, so, you know, it is definitely possible to learn multiple games, and in a weird way, I think it's actually very useful, because different games teach you different skill sets. You know, Marvel is much more twitchy, you know, much more reaction-based. You know, Street Fighter is definitely a slower paced kind of game. And then like, Tekken, for example, is, you know, you have to have very active defense because blocking is not safe in Tekken at all. It's a very scary thing to do. So it's more about distancing and position. And, you know, so all these different talents that, although they aren't as big of a factor, once you learn them in one game and apply it to other games, it really, really benefits a lot.
Now, you talked about Tokido and Sonic Fox and among others. Is there an X factor that these guys have that, you know, the people that are getting 2nd, 3rd, and 4th don't have?
Ooh, that's a really good question. I mean, it could. I wish I knew. I mean, if I knew what the secret was, then I would.
Right.
I would be playing too.
Sure.
To be honest, I really think a lot of it is just dedication and creativity and just having an open mind. You know, I know Tokido in the last few years has done a lot of like meditation kind of things, you know, like really kind of he believes a lot in, you know, healthy body, healthy mind. So he's done a lot of exercise, and I know Daigo Umehara, of course, who's one of the strongest players in the past, you know, and still is very strong right now. Like, he was at a tournament and he didn't do particularly well, and he's like, all right, no more drinking. like, I'm going to concentrate now. And then he won 2 ranking events in a row. So, there's definitely something to be said about outside factors and everything. And Sonic Fox, like, just from what I've seen of him, I don't know him personally well enough, but from the things that I've seen from him, he's such a relaxed, and he seems to be like such an easygoing kind of person. And it just doesn't seem like he lets a lot of things bother him, like external factors get to him. And so I'm sure that has a lot to do with it too, because basically, burying yourself in your own demons is like one of the quickest ways to not being able to succeed in fighting games. So.
Yeah, and you have to have a thick skin, especially in esports. Like, there's so much razzing and people digging you. It's like, people try and get in your head. You got to have a thick skin and make sure that, you don't let that bother you.
Yeah, or at least just
affect you.
Yeah, figure out how to channel it properly, right? Because there are people like Filipino Champ, for example, right? He's a heel in our community. He welcomes it. Like, the more you boo him, the louder he wants you to be, and he can channel that.
Feed off of it.
Yeah, exactly. So, depending on whether it's better for you to ignore it or to harness it or, whatever the situation is, as long as you can find a way to handle it, for sure, it definitely makes it.
Yeah, you got to know yourself and know how you handle it and like you said, try and channel it. Now, this is you'll like this. This is the part of the show that I call the 5-question combo breaker.
Okay.
And it's just 5 questions off the top of your head. Just tell me what you think. Best advice someone has ever given you?
Best advice someone has ever given me? There's a lot of things that are coming to my head right now. I definitely get a lot of good advice. Probably one of the main ones is just like to always keep growing, right? And actually, this is actually a piece of advice that I give to myself a lot of the times. And I don't want to sound conceited, like, well, the best advice I ever got was from me, but I live my life trying to understand people, always trying to, be considerate of other people. You know what I mean? I live my life very much trying to be welcoming to everybody, to understand where other people's viewpoints are. And I feel like that helps me grow, and it helps me understand a lot of the things that, you encounter, because everyone on the planet is so different. There's never going to be one solution that'll work for everybody that you run into. So the people who have the kind of philosophies like, hey, this is how people should act, is like, that's never going to work, because everybody is so different. So the only kind of rule advice that I've given myself is be considerate of others, and I would rather be the flexible one, in any relationship, whether it's a serious relationship or even just hey, I've never met you before, we're just, chatting it up, at a party or something like that. So
it's kind of like giving more than you receive, right? It's like giving somebody a little bit more than they give you in the relationship or the engagement or conversation.
A lot of the times relationships sour because both people are angry and neither of them wants to give in first. And so it's just kind of like this death spiral, and someone's got to break that chain. And, trust me, you were talking about the razzing and all that stuff like that. Like, I get that a lot on social media, and most of the time people like say negative things about me or yell at me. I'll respond to them in a very calm manner, and I'll just be like, what can I do to improve? Or, hey, do you want to talk about it? And a lot of times I'll just debate with people, and a lot of people have actually been like, you know what, I get where you're coming from. Like, originally they're like, I hate you, you're dead to me now. And then by the end of the conversation, they're like, well, okay, maybe I don't quite mean it that way,
Sure.
But, that's just what it's all about, right? Is just understanding different people's point of views and being open to understanding their point of view, and trying your best to explain it. And if they don't understand it, then you can't be mad at them. You just have to understand they think differently than you. That's all.
Well, we went deep on that one.
Sorry.
What do you think? No, that's good. I like it. That's good stuff. What do you think the esports industry needs to continue to grow and be successful, or the fighting game community in specifically? What do you think it needs to grow and continue to be successful?
The fighting game community, in my opinion, just really needs to figure out like how to, because we're kind of lagging behind a lot of the other scenes, right? So, obviously MOBAs and FPSs and, even stuff like Rocket League and things like that. There's just this big esports events out there for a lot of things. And they kind of set the way, they kind of pave the way, but they have a specific personality to them. And then they're not all exactly the same, but they still all kind of fall under like general different kinds of, they fall under kind of like a similar kind of umbrella. And, I mentioned earlier that I'm hoping that the fighting game community doesn't lose its personality. And so I think one of the main things for the fighting game community to succeed is to figure out how to become esports on our own terms. You know what I mean? Like find our own footing. The example I always give is I used to watch basketball all the time until the Lakers started sucking, and then I stopped. But I watched basketball all the time, and Inside the NBA on TNT has always been like one of my favorite shows. They always do it post game, and it's like Ernie Johnson and Charles Barkley and Kenny Smith and Shaq and Shaquille O'Neal, and all they do is like talk trash to each other, and like stupid things happen and they turn them into memes, and it's like they're really kind of trolly. They're dressed nicely. They have nice sports coats on and everything like that, but they're still them. They still retain a lot of their personality. And, I use that as kind of as a building block. I look at Inside the NBA a lot, and, that's one of the things that I want to try to maintain in the fighting game community. We're about emotion and hype and popping off and everything like that. We're not always necessarily the most civilized, but I like it that way. I personally like it that way. I like the rawness. I like the that kind of energy.
Do you find that it's kind of a cultural trend too? Like no one cared about UFC like 5-8 years ago, 10 years ago, and then UFC got huge. Same with boxing. Like no one cares who the heavyweight boxing champion is right now, but they definitely did, when my parents were growing up or their parents were growing up, when it was way more popular culturally. Do you think it's like a cultural thing too with esports games?
Yeah, it's there's a lot of danger in that, right? Because like you said, like right now people aren't as aware of boxing situations, as compared to how it was like a long time ago. And sure enough, the esports could do the exact same thing. You can see a lot of people excited about this because this generation, my generation, I'm a generally older gentleman when it comes to video games. I'm quote older crowd, even though, I'm still not old, but, this is the generation that grew up on video games and have spent all of our lives being told that we were wasting our time and that it was rotting our brains and all these things like that. And, now that we're in that age where we are the ones that have the money and stuff like that, we're the ones in the workforce and everything, and we can finally start to promote this kind of thing. And so there's this big boom from all these people that are doing this. And so there's a lot of excitement and there's a lot of high energy in it. And, it's one of the things that I think about a lot because I'm kind of scared sometimes, because, through my own actions, I'm basically, telling kids, yes, you can make money off of video games. And what if, 10 years from now, the bubble bursts and all of a sudden esports, that doesn't quite make it, or something else like virtual reality sports or something like V sports comes and replaces it or something, It's a tough kind of thing. And, so it's why one of the things that's very important to me is that, the FGC, for the FGC in particular, obviously I'm part of it. So I'm looking more towards that scene, but, that I'd want to grow on our own accord. I don't ever want to rely on venture capitalism, and that kind of thing like that, investors, because that just means you're reliant on somebody. And if they decide to go somewhere else, you have a problem. And that's why Evo is so beautiful to me, because we're in the Mandalay Bay, and we're on ESPN2, and we have, millions of views, unique views during the course of the weekend and everything. And that's still a grassroots event. It's literally an event that's still funding itself. There's no like outside of booths and sponsors and ticket sales, there's no investors, there's nothing. So it's literally an event that's still able to function because it funds itself. And that to me is important, because as long as the people who are running Evo are still interested in doing it, nothing's going to stop them, you know?
Yeah, it's like build a business that makes money, not that raises money, you know what I mean? It's like in esports we have this issue right now, especially with the recent events of, was it Envious getting $35 million? I mean, there's a lot of money being flooded in, and there's a lot of organizations not creating revenue. And like you said, it's going to create this bubble, so to speak. And then, you know, for those getting into the scene, we have to be cognizant and realize that we have to find ways to create revenue other than just angel or VC funding.
Right. And not even just creating revenue, but also creating future spaces for players too. This is something that I'm really big on personally. A long time ago, you know, there was talks about, you know, hey, FGC should join MLG so MLG can take us places and stuff. And I was really against it back then. I was really vocal about not doing that because, you know, that's kind of that same thing where it's like now you're living in your parents' house. So as long as you live there, you gotta live by their rules and everything. But like, another thing too is having a parent company like that means that they have their own staff, and that's that concerns me the most. If we could grow the FGC, which we've done a lot of, you know, on its own accord, there's also this longevity. There's this place to go for players because they're not going to be able to play forever. And one of the worst things in my mind is having a player like Punk, like I mentioned, is 18 years old and he's putting his all into these fighting games. I don't want him when he's 38, 20 years later, to just kind of look back and go like, what did I do? I wasted my life. Exactly. I wasted my time doing this.
Yeah.
Well, go ahead.
No, I was going to say, I had an interview with the CEO of Wichita Esports, and we talked about the very same thing. It's like in collegiate, you know, they're focused on education and learning and stuff like that on top of competitive video games. It's like, and that's something that I'm really passionate about too, is like we have to, it's the same thing with sports, is you play in the professional, like let's say NFL, you play in the NFL for 10, 12 years or whatever it is, and that's if you're healthy, and when you get out, you have to think about the skills that you have or the skills that you've developed, and you have to foster those things. Maybe you like art or graphic design, or maybe you like communications and broadcasting, or you want to commentate. You got to be developing those things on the side while you are still training to be competitive and win majors and Evos and things like that, because, like you said, in order for esports to be sustainable, we have to be a self-feeding ecosystem, and that's going to require people developing skills outside of Street Fighter and Marvel and things like that.
I mean, it's interesting that you bring up stuff like the NFL, because like I just typed it into Google right now because I know I heard something about this and I just wanted to make sure that I was right. But it says, like, according to a 2009 Sports Illustrated article, like 78% of NFL players are either bankrupt or under financial stress within 2 years of retirement. You know, and it's like, that's the reality of the situation, and that's the kind of thing I don't want to have happen to our players. And we're not even making the same kind of money that those guys are, you know. You know, if we can build this community, this I call it an industry, this FGC industry, so that when players retire, they can become tournament organizers or commentators or coaches or, you know, analysts or all sorts of personalities, you know, like. That to me is very, very important. And so, you know, I'm really wary about this, you know, the potential for the bubble to burst. And it's definitely something that's on my mind a lot.
And they say if you don't remember history, you're bound to repeat it. I forget who said that. It was probably someone really famous. But what's been the best play you've seen, or the most memorable moment for you in FGC or esports?
I mean, it's like, it makes me sad that I have to answer this because it is the corny answer, but probably the Daigo Perry moment, right? Which is probably one of the most famous esports videos of all time. You know, the video we'll get with Daigo and Justin Wong in Third Strike. This was like back in 2004, I think it was. 2004.
Yeah, remind us.
Yeah, so this was the 2004, and like, you know, Justin Wong was the cocky young player from the East Coast, and no one really even knew how good he was at Third Strike. at that point in time, it was like it was just Japan beat everybody. And Justin, all of a sudden, like, who a lot of people didn't like because he was an East Coast player and Evo was more on the West Coast, and so people would be rooting against him. He was the heel at the time. He wasn't the hero like he is right now. He was definitely a heel back then. And he went up against one of Japan's best Chun-Li players named Rao. And Justin beat Rao, and everyone was like, "What the heck? Like, what is happening here?" And then even after the match was over, Justin like tried to like tap Rao on the shoulder, like, "Good games," you know, and shake his hand, and you could see Rao like swing his arm back, like to brush his arm off. He's just like so salty about the loss, and everyone's like, "Oh my god!" And then he goes to fight Daigo, and Daigo, of course, is like man of legends at this point in time, right? Like, people are just like, "Oh my god, I heard he like defeated 8 people uphill in the snow," you know, like it's that kind of thing for Daigo. And he starts playing Daigo, and in the first game, he starts beating Daigo, and he's like has this gigantic life lead, and everybody's like, "Oh my god, what is happening here?" And then Justin tries to finish him off through chip damage with the super, and then that's when Daigo parries the whole thing. And keep in mind, like, to parry all those hits requires an amazing amount of timing. And to be able to do that in a roaring room, a thundering room, because I was there, and when I was there, I've never heard a room rumble like that. Like, even before he killed Justin, like, as soon as it started, people just started going insane. And he pulled off that whole thing, even added a jump parry in the middle of there to get maximum damage. And then the combo that he did afterwards was flawless. It finished Justin off in that round. And, you know, the way that the room just started thundering and everyone was, there were people running across the room because they were so hype about the whole thing. I remember turning around and looking at the audience and the excitement, and this was a small room too, and it's still one of the loudest I've ever heard. And to see that, I still remember that was probably one of the first moments that I looked at it and thought about the fighting game community. I was like, yeah, this could work, you know, because that's how excited it was, and it was just unlike anything I'd ever seen before, and it was so cool, and it was just such a moment, and there's a reason why that video went viral, because you could feel the energy from the video, you know, and it's just like it's unlike anything that I have experienced since. And yeah, that one was the moment where it really felt like I was like, man, like, if only everybody in the world could watch this and appreciate how awesome that was.
Yeah. Share a valuable resource with the podcast listeners, something that's been beneficial to you in your career.
Something that's been beneficial to me in my career. I mean, honestly, it's probably weird to say this because it's like equally useful as it is equally as super bad for you, but like, probably one of the most powerful tools in the FGC right now is just Twitter. You know, building up an audience in Twitter and being able to communicate with people over there. Like I said, Twitter is an interesting double-edged sword because you have the ability to, you know, talk with people. And yeah, on my Twitter, like I try my best to promote events. I try to promote content from different people. I try to use my voice to help other, you know, people grow and other resources grow and everything like that. And so it does become a valuable tool. But there's 3 scary things about Twitter. And these are things that I always try to repeat to myself just to make sure that I never lose sight of it, right? Is one, you can just get addicted to Twitter, right? You just get stuck on social media. You're checking it all the time. And that is one of my biggest problems. I lose so many hours in the day just because I'm just like, Twitter, oh, look at this cat video. Oh my God, this is adorable. You know, like it's dangerous. Right? But another thing too that is dangerous is that, you know, it can be full of a lot of haters. You know, because you are easy access. Anybody can tweet at you, right? Unless you block them. But if you've never heard of them before, you know, you can't block them ahead of time. And so, you know, you really have to be careful because there will be a lot of very angry people there. Like, there will be examples of, like, I remember a basketball player missed a game-winning shot and, like, there was a news article showing examples of like his Twitter feed of people just like, I hope you die, and like, oh, I hope you and your family burn down in your house, and like that's just like the kind of thing that you run into sometimes, and it's scary because you have the shield of the computer monitor, and so you have to learn how to take that and understand that people are emotional, and to not try to take it as seriously, which again I'm terrible at.
Yeah.
Because you mentioned thick skin earlier. I do not have a thick skin. It is not just my personality. So, but the last dangerous thing about Twitter, and this is actually the most interesting one, is that you have a lot of fans, and that can be almost as dangerous, because if you spend all your time blocking people who don't agree with you and only listening to everybody who agrees with you and praises you, it's not a real look. You know what I mean? You're not going to grow as a human being that way, because
sure, it's a false sense of security.
Right. And the people who disagree with you are honestly probably some of the best people that you're going to learn from. And if all you do is just sit there and go, yeah, thank you to all the people who are complimentary to you, like, it's an echo chamber, it's dangerous, and you also get a inflated sense of self. Mm-hmm. That is probably one of the biggest dangers. And so like whenever, that's why I make it a point, like people will tweet me all the time and they're like, why are you talking to these people? Like all they're doing is hating on you and they don't understand. But my personal philosophy is I'd rather talk with those people than not talk to them, than just to straight up block them or something like that, because I feel like I can learn from them, and I just feel like it's better to engage people who disagree with you, because that kind of I don't want to call it like turmoil, but that kind of pushback can be some of the most valuable things that you can get. And like I said earlier, like I want to be the malleable person. I want to be the one who understands and is flexible to other people, and that's part of that philosophy. I don't want to live in my own little echo chamber bubble and think that the world is just a perfect place for me.
Yep. What's been one daily habit that's been the biggest factor for your success?
Probably just caring. Honestly, just trying to care as much as possible. And all the people that I meet in the fighting game community, I'm an elder statesman, like I said, of the FGC. And I do see a lot of these young players and all these people who are getting into the scene. I see them a lot as friends and family, even though there are some people that I rarely ever talk to. I still consider them friends. And so, for me, it's really about their well-being over my well-being, so as long as I can remain passionate about this scene, if I know I still love the scene and still have passion for the scene and still enjoy the scene, then I know that I will enjoy what I'm doing, because one of the scariest things is having it become a job. Just become like okay, time for me to check in and do my commentary. Oh, look at this, exciting, yay. Like that's dangerous right there. But like if I can keep myself so that I know and I care about all the players and all the organizers and all the sponsors and all the stream producers, and I know that everybody's in it for a common goal, that keeps me driving forward, and that keeps it so that I don't get sick of it, and I don't, where it doesn't get to a point where I'm starting to get bitter about doing this anymore. I want to make sure I keep enjoying it, and it's hard. I mean, like, no, as much as I love it, with anything, if you're immersed in it, it's sometimes it's hard to enjoy, because there will always be those down days and stuff like that. But, that's why I'm saying, like, I try my best to keep positive on the whole entire thing.
Mm-hmm. I've really enjoyed this time together, and I've got one last question for you. What would be your advice for someone who's starting out in esports, or they're starting out in the fighting games, whether they're a player or they want to be a commentator, or they want to do something in esports? What would be your advice for someone starting out?
Just make sure it's what you love. Like, don't do it unless you really love it and it's really something that you're passionate about. You know, just make sure. You know, it's the corny thing, right? You know, what would you do if you had infinite money? And you answer, you're like, well, that's what you should be doing for your job. You know, like that's the self-help kind of thing. You know, like, but like
Yep.
if you really do want to do esports, you know, you really have to enjoy it, and you know, and as hard as this may be, don't just do it for yourself. You know, do it because you want to be a part of something that's great. And esports, there can be a lot of great, and then there definitely can be a lot of bad in it as well. But you know, again, it's just trying to be positive as much as possible, and really understanding that, you know, we're all in this together. We're all fighting this together, and so the more we can help each other, the faster we will actually grow.
Mm. Now, share with the listeners where they can engage with you online.
Sure. Yeah, you can. I mean, mostly I'm on Twitter, twitter.com/jchensor, which is JCHENSOR. I do have a Facebook page. It's like facebook.com/jchensor. I haven't updated it in forever, but I'm trying to fix that. So I want to see if I can get that going up again. But also twitch.tv/jchensor is where I stream all the time. And then also
Awesome.
twitch.tv/UltraChenTV is where I do the Tuesday show with Ultra David, who is generally one of my main commentary partners.
Yeah, we'll make sure we link up everything in the show notes. Make sure that's all out there. James, thank you so much for coming on the show. It meant a lot to me to have you on, and I really appreciate your wisdom and everything that you shared, and I just really appreciate it.
Yeah, no problem. No, thanks for having me on. And if you ever want me back, just let me know.
Awesome. And with that, I just want to remind everyone that if this all goes as planned, this show is just the beginning. Thank you, listeners. I really appreciate you. It would mean the world to me if you subscribed and shared the show. Your word of mouth is amazing.